Gopijanavalabha Girivardhari Gopijanavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Rajajanandana Yashodanandana Rajajanandana Nativa Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vijanavalabha Girivardhari Vijanavalabha Girivardhari Shodanandana Rajajanandana Yashodanandana Rajajanandana Nativa Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Madhava Kunjavihari Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha, Jaya Radha Samasundara Samasundara, Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Prabhupada. Nitya Go Hare Ba, Hare Ba, Hare Ba, Hare Ba. Nitya Go Hare Ba, Hare Ba, Hare Ba, Hare Ba. Acharya Sutta Sutta Srimad Divine Guest, Abhachan Bhakti Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Iskan Pramacharya Divine Guest Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Yo Vishnu Paparam Sabharivach Acharya Sutta Sutta Srimad Divine Guest, Srila Bhakti Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anand Puri Vaishnava Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Vidas Thakur Ki Jai, Prince Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaura Bhakta Ki Jai, Shri Shiva Hare Krishna Gopal Shyam Radha Kuli Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Vandarajman Bhagavad-Gita Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories, Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories, Shri Prabhupada Ki.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, welcome to all the devotees on the line. We hope you are all safe and sound, absorbed in associating with Krishna through Srimad Bhagavatam and taking the shelter and protection during these times in Kali Yuga. So we're going to be covering Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 4, verses 14 to 25, appearance of Sri Narada Muni. Let us cover the invocation prayers. Om Jnanatimi Vandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmei Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamsya He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Biyusha Sarva Vedeka Satphala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaitri Prada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kali Dvandho Didaritya Shri Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you are enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you who grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O light breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Lord Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshasharayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute O Srimad Bhagavatam. Offer my respectful obeisances unto you. By reading you, one attains transcendental bliss. For your syllables reign pure love of God upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madeka bandhu mad sangim man guru man mahadana man nishtaraka mad bhagya manananda namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Asadu sadhu tadai natini chochataraka hanamunchakada chinmam premna ritkatyo spura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give of saintliness to the unsaintly, O uplift the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest Mahatma to accompany my pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadyasya yatonvayadi taratas charte swabhigna swarat Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Ejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatrati Sargom Risha Damna Swena Sadani Rastakukam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I merit upon Lord Shri Krishna, because he is the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destructions of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the rich and loving being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representation of water seen on fire, or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes temporarily manifest by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Rayanalpayasha Sabya Kalavismin Yuge Jana Mandasumanda Matayo Mandapagya Upadrita. O learned man, O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all always disturbed. Narayanam namaskritya narachaivam narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savaipum saparo dharmo yatho bhakti adokshajaya hayutukya pratyata yatma suprasiddhati. The supreme occupation dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jana Yatyasyu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahoitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of God, Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Vadanti tattvavidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learned transcendentals who know the absolute truth, call this non-dual substance, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Shuru Shurusho Saradanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatsvaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees are completely freed from all vice. Great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shrintram Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Redyantastoya Badrani Vidunati Shuritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and a benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses the desire of material enjoyment from the heart of the devotees, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nasta prayashu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamasloke bhakti bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental song, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are covering Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So let us recap what we covered last week, chapter 4, verses 1 to 13. Anything that really touched you, that you found very interesting, please share in the chat. If you want to unmute, you can also unmute yourself. Mother Archana Siddhi says, if we learn the art of dying, we will live eternally. Studying Srimad Bhagavatam is actually becoming Krishna conscious. We need to have realization and purity of heart to protect us from Maya. Yes, very, very good, very important and wonderful. Realization is very important. If a liberated soul, Mother Les says, if a liberated soul like Sukadev Goswami has to remain alert about the traps of Maya, then what about us who are not liberated? We are more susceptible. Yeah. And again, this is knowledge with the idea that we want to progress to realizing the knowledge. Because yes, we may know this, which is wonderful. It's a great step to know, to have the knowledge. That is, you could say you've already achieved a great milestone by getting the knowledge. Now the next milestone is to realize that knowledge. And when we realize that knowledge, that's when life becomes even more exciting, because now we're living with realization in this world. So understanding the trap, or understanding that we can get trapped and trying to be alert, that requires realization. And Sukadev Goswami, he was fully realized, transcendental, yet he had to protect himself. So we always need to protect ourselves. That is why one of the most important limbs of bhakti is sadhu sangha, good association. Like-minded, Prabhupada says, like-minded association. Very important. Nalini Kante Prabhu says, we like the prayers we recite before Srimad Bhagavatam. It makes us have more faith and appreciate the spotless transcendental literature. Yes, Sanatana Goswami has given us beautiful prayers to Srimad Bhagavatam. Shamananda Prabhu says, these pastimes with these personalities are nectarian. All glories to Narad Muni, Maharaj Parikshit, Shri Vyasadeva, and Sukadev Goswami. Definitely. In fact, I was just reading, there's a book called Bhakta Mala. It's pastimes of all different devotees of the Lord. And it has been coming down in centuries. And practically most of our acharyas, or not all the acharyas, have studied, have associated with this book, because it's about the devotee and the Supreme Lord and the relationship. And Bhagavatam is that. Bhagavatam is all about the devotee and Bhagavan, the Bhakta and Bhagavan and Bhakti. And the more we hear that, it nurtures our devotional kripa. So very important to hear about the glories of devotees. Bafana Prabhu says, great personality, Shaunaka, Sukadev, Sutta, Goswami, eagerness to hear, readiness to imbibe, have no doubt, but full realization of absoluteness of the knowledge, position of the reciter, carefully by Prabhupada against bogus impersonalists and voidist reciters. Definitely. Prabhupada, it's amazing that how Prabhupada was able to give us what is necessary for us to be able to see things and be able to perfect our life. So Prabhupada is very expert in that. Shama says a sage is recognized by hearing. Yes, and a fool is also recognized by hearing. So therefore, a fool is recognized when he speaks. So a sage is recognized by how he hears, but a sage is also recognized by what he speaks. So hearing is key, and speaking is an important trait or quality that tells us if somebody is foolish or somebody is knowledgeable. And we can associate and recognize or appreciate a sage through ears, through hearing. Hear attentively. Repetitive hearing has the potency to give realization. Correct. Wonderful. Thank you very much for all your realizations and sharing. Let us now proceed to today's verses. Last week, we heard how Sonaka Rishi asked Sutta Goswami mainly 3 categories of questions about Srimad Bhagavatam, about Sukadev Goswami, and about Maharaj Parikshit. And now Sutta Goswami is now going to start answering, practically for the rest of this canto. He's going to start answering the questions related to these three subjects, starting with Srimad Bhagavatam and Srila Vyasadeva, because the question specifically was what inspired Srila Vyasadeva to write Srimad Bhagavatam? What was the underlying inspiration? And when we understand that underlying inspiration, it will be our guiding light in how we decide, what we decide in this world. And we're going to be covering that specifically next week in terms of what inspired, what triggered, what allowed Vyasadeva to compile, give us Srimad Bhagavatam. So Sutta Goswami starts, Sutta Uvacham Dvapare Sama Nuprapte Tritiye Yuga Paryaye Jata Parasarad Yogi Vasavyam Kalaya Hare. Sutta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parasar Muni, to Parasar in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. So Sutta Goswami is now starting the narration, and we're going to see this theme throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, that there'll be a storyline. And that storyline may be connected or will be connected to a question, and that storyline starts to unfold. But within the storyline is weaved the important lessons that we need to imbibe. Srila Prabhupada will then emphasize those lessons for us to take in and imbibe. And it could be a journey of lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. The most important thing is we are, as we mentioned, we are on the right road and we're moving in the right direction. There may be many aspects and many areas that we need to develop, which is okay. At least we are moving in the right direction. And if we're moving in the right direction, then as we will cover today, time will not destroy us. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport starts off that there is a chronological order of the 4 millenniums, namely Satya, Dwapar, Tetra, and Kali. But sometimes there is an overlap during the regime of Vaivasvata Muni, Vaivasvata Manu. There was an overlapping of the 28th round of the 4 millenniums. And the 3rd millennium appeared prior to the 2nd. So the 4 yugas, Satya Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, Tetra Yuga, Kali Yuga. Tetra means 3rd. Dwapar, Dvi means 2. Dwapar Yuga means 2nd. So generally the yugas will always go Satya Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, Tetra Yuga, Kali Yuga. And this is generally the cycle. Okay, so that's the first point. But on the 28th cycle, there's something very special that happens. And anything that's special is also manifested physically. You can see special symptoms, special signs. So this yuga or this millennium, something very special happens. And because of that, and Srila Prabhupada obviously tells us what is that special event that happens. Prabhupada says, in that particular millennium, Lord Shri Krishna also descends. And because of this, there was some particular alteration. So the Lord does not descend, the Supreme Lord himself does not descend in every millennium, but only on the 28th cycle. The mother of the great sage was Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu, the fisherman, and the father was the great Parasar Muni. That is the history of Vyasadeva's birth. Every millennium is divided into 3 periods, and each period is called a Sandhya, Vyasadeva appeared in the third Sandhya of that particular age. So here we see the four yugas, Satya Yuga. In this Millennium, it's Tetra Yuga and Dwapara Yuga. They are swapped. And then we got Kali Yuga. And you'll see in between each yuga is what we call Sandhya. It's like the juncture. We find that even we have Sandhya Arti, right? 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock Arti means the junction between day or say dawn. Mangal Arti is also a Sandhya. So night and dawn or dusk, that's Sandhya. And what's interesting, if you notice that the Sandhyas are around 10%, and the rest of the period of that age is 80%. Okay, so the middle or the Yuga Rupa is 80%, and the end or the beginning, so the Sandhya Rupa and the Sandhyatma Rupa, Sandhyamsa Rupa. So the Sandhya at the beginning and end is about 10%. So that makes 100%. And this is also interesting how people talk about the 80-20 principle. So here we see this manifesting even here, the 80 and the 20 principle. You got a transition, which is generally the 20%, and then you got the most important part of that period, which is 80%. So keep that in mind because we're going to speak about this as well. So the current period, right, as Sudha Goswami is describing, is Vaivasvata Manvantar. And we already had 6 previous Manus that appeared. We are now in the 7th Manu. Then the future Manus will be 8 to 14. So creation in itself is cyclic. It will continue. There are minor destructions and creation, and then there's the complete destruction after the 14 Manus, which means practically the life of Brahma. Now, we are in the 7th Manvantar, which means our creation has passed half its lifespan. Lord Brahma lives for our lifespan 311 trillion 40 billion years, which means we've already passed half of that. Lord Brahma lives 100 of his years, which means that Brahma is now 50 years of age, around that, depending on the calculations. Not exact, but around 50 years. So in this Manvantar, we find that on the 28th cycle, so there's 71 different cycles, and then when we get to the 28th cycle, what happens is Satya Yuga, then Tetra Yuga, then Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga. So Tetra and Dwapara Yuga, they change. In the other Yugas, it's Satya Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Tetra Yuga, Kali Yuga. And Vyasadeva appears just after Dwapara Yuga at the beginning of Kali Yuga. It is important to note that Vyasadeva appears at this point does not mean that the Vedas appear at this point. The Vedas are given at a time of creation, right at the beginning of creation, because it's the reference manual, it's the life manual. But at this point, something very special happens, which Srila Vyasadeva is going to reveal to us. So what happens on this 28th cycle? Since it's a very special cycle, that even the yugas change in terms of their naming convention. It is explained that once in a day of Brahma, which happens every 4.32 billion years, Krishna, Swayam Rupa, Krishna, appears in Vrindavan from the spiritual world. And he appears in Dwapara Yuga. And in Kali Yuga, that Supreme Lord, in Dwapara Yuga, Krishna appears, and in Kali Yuga, the Supreme Lord appears as Lord Chaitanya, Radha and Krishna combined as Lord Chaitanya. So in other yugas, it is not Krishna that appears. It is an expansion, a Vishnu expansion, Vishnu Tattva, an expansion of Krishna that appears. Same thing with Lord Chaitanya. Now, what is the benefit of this, or what is the glory of this? Is that in other yugas, you don't get all the highest levels of relationships one can have with the Supreme Lord. You don't get the highest knowledge in relation to bhakti or the devotional process. Whereas in this specific yuga that we have, because the Supreme Lord appeared himself, then he displayed the highest relationships that exist in the spiritual world in terms of loving relationships that one can have. Many people only know about the Supreme Lord's relationship as the creator or the father. That's it. But you can be parents of Krishna. You can have a conjugal relationship with Krishna. You can be friends with Krishna. That is not discussed. That is not given anywhere. But it's given to us at this specific juncture in terms of creation on the 28th cycle because of this special time that we're in. So we are very fortunate and blessed to be born at this point in time in Kali Yuga, when the Supreme Lord just appeared 5,000 years ago, when Lord Chaitanya appeared 500 years ago, when Srila Prabhupada appeared 125 years ago. We are extremely blessed to have this birth at this point in time and be connected to this wonderful wisdom. Text 15. Sakadachit sarasvatya upash priya jalam suchi vivekta eka asina udite ravimandale. Once upon a time, he, Vyasadeva, as the sun rose, took his morning ablutions in the waters of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate. Prabhupada's small purport: the river Saraswati is flowing in the Badrinath ashram area of Himalayas. So the place indicated here is Samya Prashna in Badrinath ashram, where Srila Vyasadeva is residing. Note, it says where Srila Vyasadeva is residing. That means he's still there. That is where he's staying currently. You can go visit him. But if you go visit him, you may not find him. And the reason is because he's living on a transcendental platform. You need to be transcendental to see Srila Vyasadeva, or by his mercy, he can make himself available. We find that Madhvacharya in our line, if you see in Bhagavad-Gita in the disciplic succession, from Arjuna, we then go into our line of Madhvacharya. And the time period between Arjuna being there and Madhvacharya is thousands of years. Yet, he's in the same line. Why? Because it is described that Madhvacharya went to Badrinath ashram, and he went to this exact place, Samya Prasha, where Srila Vyasadeva is, and he met Srila Vyasadeva, and Srila Vyasadeva gave him the Vedas, spoke Bhagavad-Gita to him. So in this way, this is how our lineage is continuing. And if we are qualified, spiritually qualified, we can also go take darshan of Srila Vyasadeva. So he is still present there. And the reason he is present there is because when the next Vyasa is going to appear, then Srila Vyasadeva will transition, because Vyasa is a post. So that post will then be transitioned. So Vyasadeva has different services, and the Lord will use Vyasadeva, who is none other than the Supreme Lord in his literary incarnation. The literary potency of the Lord is manifested as a person in the personality of Srila Vyasadeva. And the Lord uses him throughout the ages to give the Vedas. Text 16. Paravara Jnana Sarishi Kalena Vyaktara Ramhasa Yuga Dharma Vyatikaram Praptam Bhuvi Yuge Yuge. The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on earth in different ages due to the unseen force of time. So now we're hearing about what Srila Vyasadeva saw and why he saw these anomalies. Prabhupada writes, the great sage like Vyasadeva, great sages like Vyasadeva are liberated souls, and therefore they can see clearly past and future. Thus, he could see the future anomalies in the Kali age. And accordingly, he made arrangements for the people in general so that they can execute a progressive life in this age, which is full of darkness. The people in general in this age of Kali are too much interested in matter, which is temporary. Because of ignorance, they are unable to evaluate the assets of life and be enlightened in spiritual knowledge. So great sages like Vyasadeva, they can see the future. They call Trikala Gyan. They can see past, present, and future. And we find that Srila Prabhupada also, he could see past, present, and future. It is described that there were few, I'll just share a few incidents. One time Srila Prabhupada was walking on the beachfront in Juhu Beach, and there was a plane flying right across. The devotees were walking with Srila Prabhupada, and the plane was flying right across overhead. And Srila Prabhupada asked the disciples, which direction is the plane flying? So all the disciples looked up and the plane was flying straight ahead. So they said, well, it was flying that direction. And Prabhupada said, no, it's flying this direction. And the devotees were thinking, no, we can all see the plane is flying in this direction. How can Prabhupada say it's flying in this direction? As soon as Prabhupada said that, immediately the plane turned around and flew in the direction Prabhupada said. Naturally, the disciples were surprised. They were shocked. So Prabhupada could see. Another time in Juhu also, when they were building the temple, they have to, if the land has dolomite, which means like holes, then they have to put pylons. So, and to measure or to see, to test whether you need pylons is very costly. So there were discussions with Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada told Mr. Sethi, who was in charge of the construction, there's no need for pylons. And Mr. Sethi, he wasn't satisfied. He says, no, man, it's like, how does the Prabhupada knows there's no requirement, we don't need pylons. I mean, he doesn't know what's underground. So Prabhupada said, you don't need, you can start building, don't need pylons. And Mr. Sethi was still not convinced. No, I'm not satisfied with Swamiji. So then he paid for the engineers to come and do the testing. And sure enough, they found out that they don't pylons. In fact, he described that when they were drilling, because there's a huge drill, so they drilled to see whether it's solid ground. That drill went in, could not go any more further, and even snapped. That's how solid the ground was. And then the devotees understood that yes, Srila Prabhupada can see things that we may not be able to see. Prabhupada can see the future. Another time, Srila Prabhupada was speaking to one disciple, and the disciple would generally use a hovercraft to go. So from the temple, the disciple would use a hovercraft to go to his home. And he would go, from one place to another in terms of the journey, and then reach home. So Prabhupada was speaking to him, and Prabhupada asked him, so how are you going home? And disciple said, Prabhupada, I'm taking the hovercraft back from this place to that place. And Srila Prabhupada said, no, you're not going from this place to that place. You're going from that place to another place. And the disciple was thinking in his mind, I know how to go home. I've been doing that, so often. How can Srila Prabhupada said, I'm not taking that same route? So he thought maybe Prabhupada doesn't know. Okay, no, he didn't want to interfere with what Prabhupada thought. He just kept quiet. He didn't want to fight with Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, I know better. I'm going home. I take this journey every time. I know which tickets, which destinations I need to go home. So he jumped. He went to the harbor, took the hovercraft, and he went to the first destination. And they announced that due to bad weather, we will not go through our usual destination. We're going to take a detour to another place, and from that place, we will then reach your destination. And the exact place or the exact route that they announced, that was what Srila Prabhupada told him. And that's when he realized, my goodness, Srila Prabhupada was right. How did he know? So Trikala Gyan, sages know past, present, and future. Vyasadeva could see the future. And because he could see the future, which means he's at the beginning of Kali Yuga, so he can see what's coming. And he did not worry about himself. This aspect is going to be brought out again. He was concerned about the welfare of the people in this age of Kali Yuga. So Vyasadeva did not start complaining. He didn't start worrying. Yes, he was concerned, but he started to make arrangements, not for himself, but for others, for the welfare of others. So this is a very important quality of selflessness, to work for the welfare of others. And he started to make arrangements so that they could still, within this age of Kali Yuga, still practice progressive life. So there's a regression in life and there's a progression in life. We want to keep progressing. And then Prabhupada also tells us why people in this age will always be plagued with anxiety, because they are interested in matter. They are too much interested in matter. They're overly, excessively engrossed in matter. So as devotees, we also have to be very careful. Don't be too engrossed, too entangled in matter. Yes, we need the bare necessities. Take advantage of the bare necessities. Be well situated materially so that the body and soul is healthy, fit, and comfortable, peaceful. And then take all your energy and resources and time to progressively move in this life, in this world, spiritually. Another point Prabhupada makes, because of ignorance, they're unable to value the assets of life. What's the most valuable assets we have? It's really not our bank account. Our real assets are spiritual assets. And why? We're going to hear that soon. So everyone has this inner desire to see past and future. People want to see the past because they want to know why. Why did this happen to me? Because most people think that what happens to them is not deserved. What I experience, I don't deserve. So therefore, they want to know, what did I do in my past that I'm getting now this result? Because I didn't do anything wrong to get this. So it's unfair. No, it's not unfair. When we hear about Maharaj Parikshit's life, we will touch into this philosophical point, okay, of our past actions and how we actually see, on how we should see our past actions. But we should know that whatever we get now is due to us according to our karma. And astrologically, we can understand that. We can also see the future because certain events are destined in our life. And they are destined, and we can see that from an astrological perspective. So the example is given that it's brilliant, the sun is shining brilliantly, and after a few hours, you start seeing the clouds gather. As soon as you start seeing the clouds gather, you immediately understand it's going to rain. Therefore, you start preparing. And what are some aspects of preparation? One aspect is you start preparing with an umbrella. So if you're going to go on a journey, you know it's going to rain, therefore you take an umbrella. Now, if you look at this analogy example, is you understand that if there's clouds, dark clouds, there's going to be rain. If there's going to be rain, you're going to get wet. To protect yourself from getting wet, you use an umbrella. So the umbrella is a protective mechanism, protective instrument that you use. But how did you know that you need to use an umbrella? You got the sign from the clouds. Similarly, astrology can tell you the signs of the futures of what you're going to get. So you're going to get rain in the future. Therefore, prepare for the rain. Get an umbrella. Prabhupada gives an example of one prince who was the astrologer. The king went to a good astrologer and said, when will my child, who's a prince now, how will he die? So the astrologer looked at his chart and said, well, your son is going to die by the horns of a deer. It's going to be pierced by the horns of a deer. So the king thought, okay, so if my son is going to die because he's going to be pierced by the horns of a deer, I'm going to protect him from the environment of deers, so that I'll make sure he doesn't go into any environment where there are deers. And if I can do that as a king, he has all the facilities. If I can do that, I will protect my child from death. So that was what he thought. So therefore, he was always protective of his child from going out. Even if he went out, there was guards, they knew what to look for. In this way, throughout his life, he was protected from a deer. But it so happened that when the time of death came, the child wasn't in the jungle, he was at home. And he was playing in the dining room. And all of a sudden, on the wall was this live deer that the king hunted and had mounted, half like the neck, like the picture you see, mounted on the wall. In some homes they do that. So, on the wall was this head of the deer, and the prince was playing, and he happened to come right underneath the deer, and the deer, half the head of the deer fell from the wall, pierced the prince, and the prince died. So the astrologer predicted how he's going to die, and it happened, even though the king was trying to protect himself, protect the son from dying. So you cannot stop what's destined to come. But our consciousness, by elevating our consciousness, by having a different perspective, we can see what's coming and we can deal with what's coming in the proper way. So that even if we go through the same experience that we're going to go through, but if we have the proper understanding and the proper perspective, that can change the experience. So you cannot change what's going to come to you, but you can change the way you're perceiving and experiencing what's coming to you. With devotees, astrology does not work, and we're going to share why. One time, Srila Prabhupada was sitting, you'll see on desk, Prabhupada would generally sit behind a low-level desk. So this was in Detroit. Prabhupada was sitting there, And there was about 20 odd devotees, and there was one Indian gentleman just behind the desk. So at one point he asked Srila Prabhupada, Swamiji, can you read my palm? So palmistry is also a science. You can see your past, present, future. You can see your health situation, your financial situation, relationship, children, everything on your palms. Krishna has made this human body in such amazing ways that through your eyes you can diagnose your body. Through your palm you can diagnose your body. Through your feet you can diagnose. You can through different by understanding nails, etc. So many ways you can understand and get knowledge. So he asked, Swamiji, can you read my palms? Prabhupada said, not important. We simply depend on the Supreme Lord, and we don't worry about astrology and palmistry and all these things. No, but Swamiji, can you please read my palm? And Prabhupada emphasized again that if we depend too much on these things, it dilutes our dependence on bhakti, dilutes the process of bhakti. So we have to be very careful. We simply depend on Krishna. And then this Indian gentleman was adamant. He says, but Swamiji, can you read my palm? So Prabhupada said, okay. So Prabhupada switched on the desk lamp. So give me your palm. So immediately the gentleman handed Prabhupada's palm, and he was excited, and all the devotees were even excited. Devotees thought, oh, I'm going to be next. I'm going to ask Prabhupada to read my palm. I also want to know. So then Prabhupada started, put his hand under the light and started to read. And then Prabhupada slammed his hand. All bad. Birth, death, disease, and old age. The man got a shock. That was the truth, right? Birth, death, disease, and old age. Immediately took his hand. He didn't want. He didn't expect that. And Prabhupada said, but simply by chanting Hare Krishna, all that can be erased. So for devotees, when we clap our hands in kirtan, Nectar Devotion says your lines change. In fact, one devotee, she did an experiment. So she's into palmistry. So in palmistry, generally what you do is you have black ink, and then you make imprints of your palm on piece of paper which you use, and then they analyze that. So she noticed that she had an imprint, and then after a few years, the devotee naturally is in, everybody's in kirtan, we're clapping, and she took the prints of his hand again, she noticed, and naturally she found that many of the lines have changed. So they physically change, and they also subtly in terms of they don't work anymore. So if I go to an astrologer or palmist and I say, please, analyze my life, they cannot give you they cannot give an accurate report of your life. Why? Because by the process of devotional service, your life has changed. Your karma has changed. Right? Things have changed in your life because Krishna has come in your life. Therefore, we don't depend on that. Yes, when a child is born, we may use astrology to understand the inclinations of the child, certain events, etc. But otherwise, we simply depend on Krishna, and that way we don't need to bother too much in relation to astrology and predictions. I'm going to share with you, because predictions of this age is already given in scripture. In the 12th canto also, you will read the different predictions that are there. This is a 27-minute video. I'm not going to show the full video. I'm just going to show you part. I'm going to post the link to this video. I'll be sharing. Oh yes, there's two links. So there's one about Badrik Ashram, which you can see during your spare time. And the other one is this video that I'm sharing, which is about seeing the things that are going to manifest. So I'm going to start off where it's talking about this current century that we're in, the last 5 centuries, this Kali Yuga. And then we'll discuss.
the last 5 centuries. The Padma Purana reads, "In the first Sanja of the Kali Yuga, I will appear on the earth in a beautiful place by the Ganges shore. I will be the son of Sachi Devi, and my complexion will be golden." Bhagavad Purana. In the age of Kali, Krishna appears in a golden form, chanting the syllables Krishna. He descends along with his weapons, limbs, and associates. Those with intelligence worship him with Sankirtan Yagya. Garuda Purana. First, he'll be the husband of Lakshmi. Then he'll be a sannyasi who stays near Jagannath Puri with Lord Jagannath. Bhavishya Purana. In Kali Yuga, everyone will see my form as a sannyasi, with eyes filled with tears of bliss and bodily hairs erect in ecstasy. About one foreign ruler, the Bhavishya Purana reads, Emperor Akbar established a new religion, Din Ilahi, which underlined the essence of Hinduism, Islam, Buddhist, and Christianity. Then the Purana adds, Varanas, forest dwellers, the inhabitants of the islands of Varana, Sri Lanka, developed trade contacts with the Gurundas, especially the Isaputras. Gurundas generally meant cow killers with white bodies, i.e. Europeans, and Isaputra means those who follow the Son of Lord, or perhaps Christians. The inhabitants tried to follow the same teachings of the Sun God, and therefore virtuous and worthy of promoting global business. The king of the western dweep was called Vikat, i.e. horrid talker or obsolete person. And later, female relative Vikatavati will rule from Calicut by Ashta Kushalia Marg, Council of Parliament. Her people will build factories. They had high propensity for overseas business with rule of citizens. Then this situation continued until they consolidated their grip by divide and rule concept, till Swadesh, self-rule. Bharat witnessed innumerable turns and became an integral entity under the banner of Prajapalyana, democracy. But by that time the inhabitants of Bharat belonged to many sects, religions and languages, but have since emerged as a strong democracy with an identity of its own. Also in the Bhavishya Purana it reads, One saffron-clad man will travel and teach the Vedas in the language of the Malechas, and he will initiate with fire. The same Purana, Pasikabhava, chapter 20 reads, The uncontrolled progeny of Kashyapa Muni had become meat-eaters situated in different countries. Although being of a non-dharmic background, some will attain the Brahminical status. Accepting the tuft of hair and sacred thread, they'll be well versed in the uncontaminated fruit of the Vedas. They'll worship Krishna by yagya prescribed by the lords of the demigods, the protector of Mother Sachi. Predictions of present times and forthcoming events. Despite improved material conditions for some in recent decades, wars continue and the age of Kali proceeds. In the Vedic view, mass meat-eating consumption increases war because industrialized economies rely more on fossil fuels. Of course, more and more meat-eating and outside of the home continues. A huge disparity between the rich and the poor across the world. One can only get justice if one has enough money under the table. People become foul-mouthed and arrogant, and ego will rule the day. People will idolize and have it not for darshan, but for the wrong kind of people, non-spiritual people. People's beauty will be judged by their hairstyle, and the goal of life will be just to fill one's belly. Old people will be ignored, neglected, and lonely. Marriage will be made for lust only, and atheism will increase. The only people respected were those who were good at juggling their words. Keeping a family together would only be those who are expert. The youth will become unruly or disenfranchised. The city will be stressful. People will be more and more entangled in their complex cities. Even holy places will become polluted. Land will get drier. There will be more and more environmental disasters. And there will be more impersonalism, intoxication, depression, perversion. Women will become more like men, aggressive and unchaste. and unruly. Illusion will increase. However, many people will seek change. New ideas, new concepts will take place. A spiritual revival. Like new shoots poking up through the decay, an ethical green movement will rise. Also, a tendency to rediscover ancient wisdom and diets. Though effectively there will be a polarization of humankind between spiritual and dark forces. But the Golden Age will continue, and it will phase in and end such sectarian attitudes. The Brahmavata Purana reads, Krishna says to Mother Ganga, on the earth 5,000 years of Kali will be sinful and people will deposit their sins in you by bathing. After that the chanting of my holy names will appear. For 10,000 years of Kali such devotees of mine will be around the whole world. The holy names are like an umbrella, sheltering chanters from Kali's influence. This period will gradually phase in and eventually become mainstream. But what could happen during the crossover points between opposing forces? The Bhagavad Purana predicts these future events. The Daityas, demons, who stage managed the victory of the Malechas over Dharma Shakti's forces for good, then constructed Jalayanas, sea vessels, to Hadikand, yellowish people, north of the Himalayas, where men were very strong like Devas initially, but in the course of a few years of Mahayuddha, cunning and deceitful battles, the Harikan people appealed to Mahendra, their powerful leader, for protection. At Indra's request, Vishvakarma created a Brahmi Yantra, a sophisticated machine, by using which purpose of one khand or region could not travel to another. But this, I suggest, is more than just mere mundane passport control. With enough cooperation, it's already theoretically possible to have a microchip population as a means of creating borders. For example, determine where one can buy or sell, which doors you can pass, and what transport one can use. The Bhagavad Purana continues. There will also be a kind of Vatsya, a less potent or small use, of a Mahavayu, a great wind weapon. This Vatsya Mahavayu will destroy the Daityas, the Yakshas and the Pishchakas, but will protect the Dharmic Brahmanas and other upright persons for a number of years. Therefore, there will be a period of spiritual revival. Perhaps this is the same as the aforementioned Golden Age. However, when Kali Yuga really sets in? According to the Bhagavad Purana, after that period of spiritual revival, Bhogasimha, intense lion-like pleasure, and Kali Simha, sports and amusements, will become amongst the leaders. They will stay in a Krida Vattanaga, city of material enjoyment, and will carry out the wishes of Kali Yuga, especially the task of destroying Varna and Ashram. The effects of Kali Yuga will then continue without resistance. Humans will develop a barbaric, sinful mentality of civilization as a result of collapse. There will be an increase of wars, hunger, drought, and disease. By halfway through Kali Yuga, that's about 213,000 years from now, cultural values will have disappeared. There will be neither the institution of marriage, nor kinships, nor social reformer, not even a karmakata, a teacher of morals. Trees will shrink, animals, cattle will too. Flowers, fruits and foods will lessen. The land will gradually lose its fertility, and as a result, the populations will become like scavengers, even if they've got the technology. Beasts of prey and rats will hunt on humans. By the third quarter of Kali Yuga, Kalakalpa, crossbreeded beings will come who will regularly eat human flesh. This species will have beastly affairs with any female. They'll also have affairs with co-males, children, and even animals. They will live in hellish places, the worst kind of frightening places of retribution, and be grossly overpopulated. The sky will grow dark, and thunder and lightning will become common. By the end of Kali Yuga, 8 years will be considered old, and people will be no more than 2.5 feet tall. The land will be desert-like, yielding nothing. People will eat each other to survive. Mothers will eat their own babies. The world will be overrun by the worst kind of people. By then, demoniac species would have migrated to earth also. However, the Kalki Purana says the Lord will appear on the earth in Shambhala. Astride a white horse, he and Kalki and his armies will ride out to confront the enemy. First, he will wipe out the armies of Kikat, a city of greed and wealth. That army will include knights who will ride on beasts with teeth like crocodiles. Then Kalki will negotiate with their army of women. A sorcerer will summon the goddess Kali, who will fight ferociously, but Kalki will absorb her into his own body. Then Kalki will vanquish 2 giant Rakshasas. He and his armies will then ride out to the world and take on millions of beastly tribes and kill the demons, Coke and Vikok. Finally, Kalki will kill the serpents guarding their fortress, and therefore be face to face with the Naga Kanyas, empowered guardians of Naga gold. After Kalki's mission is complete, he will crown descendants of Lord Ram as the kings of the earth. From that moment, the Satya Yuga will begin. The demigods will settle on the earth more and more and replenish it. A true, long-term golden age will follow. The longer-term future. That marks the beginning of a new Yuga cycle of 4 ages, a total of 4.3 million years altogether. This red arrow here is the time period we've just covered. Vaishvata Manu, the current progenitor of mankind, will remain for another 43 of these Yuga cycles. Then the next Manu, called Savani, will begin a new generation across the universe. After him, there will be another 6 Manus until the end of this particular day of Lord Brahma. Then, in just over 2 billion years from now, apart from the highest ranking planets, on the earth will be full devastation. Each day of Lord Brahma is 4.32 billion Earth years long. Brahma will live for a total of 311 trillion 40 billion Earth years. Brahma's death will coincide with the time when this universe and millions of others are withdrawn back into the body of Mahavishnu. One lifetime of each universe is just one breath of Mahavishnu, and when he breathes out again, millions of new universes begin, and so on and so on. In this material world, the time cycle goes on eternally. But the goal of life is to break free from that. So we should focus on developing a loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, and hence enter his eternal abode, which is full of bliss. I hope you found this presentation interesting. Please chant Hare Krishna and be happy.
So it's interesting how the Vedas predict many things that are to come. It has predicted what you've already experienced, it's predicting what we're going through, and it's predicting the future, as you saw in this presentation. This 80-20 principle, which is also there commonly in the material sphere, Pareto principles, 80-20 principle, we find that, as we said, the age, 100% is divided into 20%, which is Sandhya, and 80% of the actual age or period. So we can use this in many ways, and one is that we may want 100% in our life in terms of expectations. We want, no suffering, no stress, everything, prosperity, health. We want that. But let's say we only get 80% of that. We should be content and happy with that 80% and not focus on the 20% that was not met, which may be bad or unfortunate events, etc. A lot of people, they focus on the 20% and not looking at the 80% that is wonderful and glorious. So even as devotees, it could be the other way around. We could have, so much misery into our life. Let's say our, 80% of our life is moving in the wrong direction, so much trouble, turmoil, stress, etc. But the 20% may be Krishna consciousness. And rather than focus on the 80%, we should be focusing on even the 20% of Krishna consciousness, because that will save us at the time of death. That will help us grow into the direction of becoming more happier. If we focus on the negative and the unfortunate events and don't practice spiritual life diligently, we will experience the predictions of Kali Yuga, which we definitely don't want. So we want to focus on Krishna. We want to direct our attention on Krishna and be grateful for whatever percentage of happiness, prosperity, wonderful aspects of our life. Focus on that, thank the Lord, and try to focus more and more of our energy on the Supreme Lord. 17 and 18. Bhautikanam cha bhavanam shakti rasam cha tatkritam ashradanam ni satvan dumedan rasitayusham durbhagamscha janan vikshe muni divyena chak shusham sarvavarnashramam manam yad Dado Hitam Amogadrik, the great sage who was fully equipped in knowledge, could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life, and that duration of life, and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus, he contemplated for the welfare of men in all statuses and orders of life. Prabhupada says in the purport, the unmanifested forces of time are so powerful that they reduce all matter to oblivion in due course. In Kali Yuga, the last millennium of a round of 4 millenniums, the power of all material objects deteriorates by the influence of time. In this age, the deterioration of the material body of the people in general is much reduced, and so is the memory. The action of matter has also not so much incentive. The land does not produce food grains in the same proportion as it did in other ages. The cow does not give as much milk as it used to give formerly. The production of vegetables and fruits is less than before. As such, all living beings, both men and animal, do not have some sumptuous, nourishing food. Due to want of so many necessities of life, natural duration of life is reduced. The memory is short, intelligence is meager, mutual dealings are full of hypocrisy, and so on. The great sage Vyasadeva could see this by his transcendental vision. As an astrologer can see the future fate of man, or an astronomer can foretell the solar and the lunar eclipse, those liberated souls who can see through scriptures can foretell the future of men or for mankind. They can see this due to the sharp vision of spiritual attainment. So here we find Prabhupada is describing some of the symptoms, which are also described in the 12th canto in terms of the people of Kali Yuga. And we can see this is very, very practical. These symptoms are visible even now. If you look at the fruits and vegetables, 50 years ago, the mango, the pip was small and so much flesh. Now the pip's far more bigger with little flesh. Eventually there'll be only pip with no flesh. So that's how this age of Kali Yuga is progressing. The main symptoms of this age is your bodily strength will decrease. People become faithless. Srila Vyasa Goswami says that means they wouldn't, they would not be interested in spiritual life. They'll be so confused where to place their faith. They'll be bewildered of where to place their faith. They'll be impatient due to lack of goodness. We find that people are so impatient. They want everything quickly. In spiritual life also, we may want everything quickly, but we have to understand it requires time. It requires patience. Therefore, we have to cultivate the mode of goodness so that we can be patient, dull-witted, reducing duration of life, and unlucky. So Srila Vyasadeva, he contemplated on how to help everyone, understanding their situation, what would be ideal, what would be best for them, so that at least even amidst this bad bargain, which we've asked for due to our past karma, we are placed in the situation. Otherwise, we would not be here. Unless we are pure devotees and we're coming as perfect instruments for the Supreme Lord. If that is the case, at least it'll be in scripture like Srila Prabhupada, but otherwise we are coming forced in this world due to karma. And we now have a bad bargain. We don't want to misuse the glorious opportunity that we've got, the knowledge that gives us this understanding, that shows us what's coming ahead, what we're experiencing. So by Prabhupada's mercy, Prabhupada has practically saved us all. Everyone that has come in contact with Srila Prabhupada, he has saved our lives. In that now we know exactly where we're heading to. We know the goal of life. We know the objective is to reawaken our loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, go back to the spiritual world. So with that in mind, we can practice spiritual life. So Vyasadeva was contemplating, what can I do to help people in this age? The time factor, as it's mentioned, will destroy everything. If you put an apple and just keep the apple there on the table, just by the force of time, that apple will start to decay. Here we have, the mountain range. Now, the apple will be immediately impacted and will start to deteriorate. We may say, well, the mountain range is not deteriorating, but that does not mean that the mountain range is going to be there forever. The mountain range also is beaten by the weather patterns or by natural disasters. And if that will not destroy the mountains, then when there is minor destructions of the creation, the mountains will be destroyed. When there's total devastation, the mountain will be destroyed. So whether it's immediate, it's gradual, or long-term, the time factor in this material world is destructive. Therefore, Krishna says, of destroyers, I am time. In the spiritual world, the time factor increases loving relationships. In the material world, time factor destroys. It's an interesting article that I read. The Vedas has 4 subdivisions called Samhitas. So the Vedas, as the source of knowledge, has 4 categories. One category is called Samhita, which are where the mantras are. All the different mantras are kept in a category called Samhita. Then a Brahmana, which is all the prayers are contained in that section. The Aranya and Upanishad, they contain the philosophical content. So there's a philosophy that talks about the mantra, and then there's a prayer related to the mantra. Okay? Like this, there's the category of the Vedas. So all in all, the Vedas consist of 1,130 Samhitas, 1,130 Brahmanas, 1,130 Aranyakas, and 1,130 Upanishads, a total of 4,520 titles. By the influence of time, however, many texts have been lost, stolen, and destroyed. Soldiers of Alexander the Great used the scriptures as fuel in kitchens. Muslims destroyed them whenever possible. Britain carried many scriptures away. The German and Russians took Atharva Veda, which contains Dhanur Veda and military science. Thus, at present, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, Tattva Sandarbha has only about 11 Samhitas, 8 Brahmanas, 7 Aranyas, 220 Upanishads are available. This is less than 6% of the original Veda. There is one reason why we cannot now study the Vedas, because it's not available. At the same time, even what is available is vast in terms of the range of content it covers. And Lord Krishna appeared in this world and gave us Bhagavad-Gita, which is the essence of the Vedas. So even if we don't have all the Vedas because of the time factor destroying everything, still we have the essence of the instructions which we can imbibe, and then we have the expansion of the essence of the Vedas, which is Srimad Bhagavatam. So the key philosophical point that we have to take here is that time factor destroys. Therefore, do not depend on matter, because matter will change. Matter will be transient due to the factor of time. We have to know that our relationships, material relationships will end. Our material facilities and faculties will end. Our body will end, because that is the influence of time. Real welfare. And all such transcendentalists who are naturally devotees of the Lord are always eager to render welfare service to the people in general. They are the real friends of the people in general, not the so-called public leaders who are unable to see what is going to happen 5 minutes ahead. In this age, the people in general, as well as their so-called leaders, are all unlucky fellows, faithless in spiritual knowledge and influenced by the age of Kali. They are always disturbed by various diseases. For example, in the present age, there are so many TB patients in TB hospitals, but formerly this was not so, because the time was not so unfavorable. If Prabhupada was writing this purport now, then in this purport he would put COVID. During his time, he experienced his knowledge in terms of TB. Prabhupada would always do that in his purports. When Prabhupada would experience something, then Prabhupada would write. Just like one time Prabhupada was going past a merry-go-round, and there was a big wheel. So Prabhupada, saw, this was obviously the first time Prabhupada saw this, like circus and merry-go-round, and Prabhupada saw the big wheel. So Prabhupada asked the devotees, what's that? So they told Prabhupada, it's a big wheel. You go in, you sit in, you jump in at the bottom, and then it takes you right up to the top, and then brings you down to the bottom, and takes you up right on top and brings you down. So Prabhupada said, just see, big wheel. And Prabhupada told them, and in the purport on that, the next day, Prabhupada had written that our life is just like a big wheel. We go to the heavenly planets, then we come down to the material world, or to the hellish planets. And then we go up, and then we come down, just like a big wheel. So Prabhupada would do that. So here Prabhupada is talking about TB. The unfortunate men of this age are always reluctant to give a reception to the transcendentalists who are representatives of Srila Vyasadeva, and selfless workers, always busy in planning something which may help everyone in all statuses and orders of life. The great philanthropists are those transcendentalists who represent mission of Vyasa, Narada, Madhava, Chaitanya, Rupa, Saraswati, etc. They are all one and the same. The personalities may be different, but the aim of the mission is one and the same, namely to deliver the fallen souls back home, back to God. So this is the compassionate nature of the devotees of the Lord, like Vyasadeva, Narada, Madhava, Chaitanya, Rupa, Saraswati, Srila Prabhupada, that they're interested in helping people. Their mission is, how can we bring people back to Krishna's lotus feet? This is real welfare. The example is given of a lost child. The child's crying, the child is lost, and the child is going door to door knocking. The child doesn't know where she stays. The child is small, so the child doesn't have any idea of where she stays. And the child knocks on your door, and you open the door, and you see the child very exhausted, crying, lost, maybe for hours or days. Now, you could help the child in different ways. You could feed the child. You could bring the child into your home, and you could bathe the child, feed the child, tell the child to rest, and then the child can continue, leave and continue. So you could help the child. You could give the child some money. Many ways you could help the child. But the best way to help that child is to understand who the child's parents are, contact the parents, and return the child back to the parents. Yes, while you're doing that, while you're contacting the parents, you can look after the child, feed the child, bathe the child, clothe the child, make sure the child is rested, and then also call the parents. Right? But without connecting the child back to the parents, the child will always be lost and miserable. Similarly, we in this world, no matter what we do materially, no matter what other welfare work we do, if we do not help people connect themselves back to the Supreme Father, Krishna, then they will always be lost. So therefore, the great devotees of the Lord, those who are transcendentalists, they're the greatest philanthropists. Because why? They are helping, they are truly helping by eternally stopping all suffering. Prabhupada would often in his lectures say that 4 main problems is birth, death, disease, and old age. That's the biggest problems. Not everything. Everything else is a ramification of the main problem of forgetfulness of Krishna. So birth, death, disease, and old age can be solved by returning back to the Supreme Lord. And how can we return back to the Supreme Lord? By always remembering Him, by reconnecting, rekindling, reviving our relationship with Krishna. So that is real welfare work. We should not forget to help in practical ways, but at the same time, don't be distracted from the most important welfare work. Text 19. Chaturhotram karma sudam prajanam viksha vedikam vyadadad yagyas santatyai vedam ekam chaturvidam. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupation could be purified, and also and to simplify the process, he divided one Veda into 4 in order to expand them among men. The title is incorrect. Formerly, there was only the Veda of the name Yajur, and the 4 divisions of sacrifices were there specifically mentioned. But to make them more easily performable, the Veda was divided into 4 divisions of sacrifice, just to purify the occupational service of the 4 orders. Above the 4 Vedas, namely the Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva, there are the Puranas and the Mahabharata, the Samhitas, which are known as the 5th Veda. Srila Vyasadeva and his many disciples were all historical personalities, and they were very kind and sympathetic towards the fallen souls of this age of Kali. As such, the Puranas and the Mahabharata were made from related historical facts, which explained the teachings of the 4 Vedas. There is no point in doubting the authority of the Puranas and the Mahabharata as parts and parcels of the Vedas. In the Chandogya Upanishad, the Puranas and the Mahabharata, generally known as histories, are mentioned as the 5th Veda. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, that is the way of ascertaining the respective values of the revealed scriptures. So Srila Vyasadeva could understand the need. He understood the influence of this age on the people, and in order to help them, he decided, okay, I'm going to take the one Veda and divide that Veda into 4 so that it becomes more easily assimilated by those in Kali Yuga. And then further, he gave the 5th Veda, which is the Puranas and the histories, because that the histories, and it makes it easier for us to understand and digest the philosophical concepts in terms of pastimes, in terms of recorded stories or life stories of the devotees. So in this way, this is how Srila Vyasadeva contemplated how to help the people in Kali Yuga. Now understand that prior to Srila Vyasadeva doing this, all this knowledge that Srila Vyasadeva is penning down was coming down through Shruti, simply by hearing. So in all the previous ages, the knowledge that Srila Vyasadeva is sharing, the Vedas, was simply coming down through guru and disciple by hearing. And they had photographic memory, so they could remember everything. Vyasadeva could see our memory, that we, at every point we to recall something, we need memory sticks. So he could see this age of Kali Yuga, and therefore he decided, okay, I need to pen it down. And that's how the Vedas were written down by Srila Vyasadeva. But otherwise it was coming down. In one lecture, Srila Prabhupada says, in this Kali Yuga, people are very fallen. And one of the reasons he gives why we are fallen, Prabhupada says, because our memory is very fickle. We can't even remember anything. So that's one reason why we are fallen. So if somebody thinks, well, I'm not fallen, I'm a great devotee, well, let's see if you have Shrutidhar memory. If you don't have Shrutidhar memory, you don't have photographic memory, then fallen. It's a sign of nature fallen. Those who are pure devotees of the Lord, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj had Shrutidhar memory. And the sages in the previous ages, they could all remember. Now it's interesting that we find that when Srila Prabhupada also appeared, even though Srila Prabhupada didn't have a photographic memory, Prabhupada was giving us the essence of the philosophy through his Bhaktivedanta purports. And this is also how the Lord uses his pure devotees to come into this world and also experience the traits and the qualities of this world. Srila Prabhupada, being a pure devotee, he could have been totally transcendental to all the ill effects of Kali Yuga. But if that was how he appeared in this world, then it wouldn't be as real for us in embracing Prabhupada's teachings. But we find that when Prabhupada was born, he had typhoid. A pure devotee of the Lord, Nitya Siddha devotee, getting influenced or impacted by typhoid. So right from his birth, it was like he's a normal human being in this world going through the same experiences everybody else is going. Diseases, wars, calamities, etc. So much challenges with Prabhupada's business, family, etc. Everything that we would go through, Prabhupada went through. But being connected to the disciplic succession, to those sages, to this knowledge of the Vedas, Prabhupada was guided, perfected his life in a practical way, and taught that same process to us. So Prabhupada was an acharya. He taught by example. 20. Rigyajur samata vakya Vedas chatvara udrita itihasa puranam cha pancha mo veda uchate. The four Vedas, the four divisions of the original source of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately. But the historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the fifth Veda. So I'm going to play another video clip that will show the relevance of the Vedas in our lives.
There are three ways of acquiring knowledge. 1. Direct sense perception. 2. Mental speculation. And 3. Hearing from authority. We, the living beings, the acquirers of knowledge, suffer from 4 inherent shortcomings: imperfect senses, tendency to be illusioned, tendency to commit mistakes, and propensity to cheat. Since we cannot overcome these drawbacks, no matter what we do, direct sense perception and mental speculation cannot provide us with perfect knowledge. In the Vedic tradition, knowledge is traditionally acquired by hearing or learning from a qualified teacher. The knowledge of the Vedas is coming down the ages since the dawn of creation. The knowledge taught in the Vedas is perfect, being given by God Himself, who is free from the above-mentioned 4 defects.
Veda means knowledge. Veda means that knowledge which is beyond time and space, which is always true. What is called knowledge today might be considered non-knowledge tomorrow. It might be considered, what is considered right today might be considered wrong tomorrow. Just like so many people at school, they were taught that Pluto is a planet, and then it got deplanetized and it's not a planet anymore. It used to be knowledge to call Pluto a planet, and now Pluto is not called a planet. And now I just saw in the paper today that they're maybe going to replanetize it. So this is not knowledge. This is not scientific knowledge where it's changing all the time. The Veda means fixed knowledge from beyond time and space.
This knowledge has come down in a disciplic succession. That material knowledge is imperfect is self-evident from the fact that it undergoes amendments every now and then. Even in the field of science, scientists keep changing their opinions. For example, Dalton said that the atom cannot be split. Rutherford said that it can be split, and Bohr gave a new model. Thus, material knowledge is relative. It is constantly being revised, modified, and updated. On the other hand, the Vedic knowledge is absolute. It never changes. The Vedas have stood the test of time since time immemorial. There are striking similarities in some of the concepts illustrated in the Vedas to modern science discoveries. From embryology to cloning, from harvesting nuclear energy to aeronautics, from relativity of time to zoology and botany. The Vedas have also made accurate predictions of incarnation or great personalities who will appear in future, like Buddha, Chanakya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Emperor Chandragupta, Ashoka, Jesus, and Muhammad. If the Vedas are of mundane origin, then how is it possible for them to state profound truths which modern science has only recently started discovering? And how can they make accurate predictions about future happenings? The conclusion is unmistakably obvious. The Vedas are coming from a person who is all-knowing, who knows past, present, and future. In other words, the Vedas are the words of God. Our misfortune, however, is that we have no faith in the Vedas. Instead, we choose to have blind, unquestioning faith in modern science. The glitz and glamour associated with technological advancement makes it appear very attractive, but its ultimate results are disastrous. Modern cities are full of countless high-tech gadgets produced by modern science which make life appear very easy, but they also lead to multifarious problems, far more complicated than what they were originally meant to solve. There is no shortage of examples to illustrate this. Automobiles and factories have apparently increased the facilities in our life, but the air pollution they have caused has become a deadly health hazard. Surveys have revealed that just breathing the air in a polluted city like New Delhi is equivalent to smoking several cigarettes a day. Such cities are therefore full of chronic asthma and lung cancer patients. Water now seems to be so easily available at the turn of a tap, but little do we know that it is greatly contaminated due to chemicals and effluents added during its transit from the river to the tap, thus leading to epidemics of waterborne diseases. Advancements in technology has led to a culture of sedentary occupations, fast foods, cold drinks, high-speed and high-pressure lifestyles, all of which lead to a variety of debilitating bodily and mental diseases. Modern medicine appears to provide quick and easy cures to diseases. All that you have to do is put a pill into your mouth, but these inevitably have harmful side effects on the body, which soon leads to a vicious cycle of illness and medicines. Important or relevant as modern science may be, it deals primarily with dead matter. The Vedas, on the other hand, deal with the science of the self and the source of the self. Advancement in science and technology has no bearing on the Vedic knowledge, as the Vedas are meant to deliver a suffering soul from the ocean of nescience in the past, present, and in future. The Vedas teach us who we are, who God is, and what our relationship with Him is. They also teach us the method by which we can revive our lost relationship with God. We should learn all these things from the Vedas and put them into practice to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Hence, a sincere seeker of truth who wants to know more about himself and God should not waste his valuable time in researching with his own limited brain. Rather, he should cultivate the knowledge of the Vedas by approaching a guru. The guru or spiritual master is like a walking scripture. He has thorough knowledge of the essence of the Vedas, and he can impart this wisdom to a sincere disciple who hears from him submissively and serves him.
So Srila Vyasadeva understood that he needs to make the Vedas relevant for the people of Kali Yuga. And Srila Prabhupada also, in the same light, took the Vedas, took the knowledge that he has received and made that relevant for the age of Kali Yuga at this time. Text 21. Tatra Vedadara Paila Sama Gojai Nimi Kavi Vaishampan Yana Evaiko Nishnato Yajusam Uta. After the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, Paila Rishi became the professor of the Rig Veda, Jaimini the professor of Samaveda, and Vaisampanya alone became glorified by the Yajurveda. In the purport, Prabhupada says that the different Vedas were entrusted to different learned scholars for the development in various ways. Text 22. Atharvan Giram Sams Asit Samantur Dharn Runo Muni Itihasa Purananam Pati Mero Maharshana. Thus, the Samantu Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Atharva Veda, and my father, Ramahasana, was entrusted with the Puranas and the historical records. Purport. In the Shruti mantras also it is stated that Angira Muni, who strictly followed the rigid principles of the Atharva Veda, was the leader of the followers of the Atharva Vedas. So Srila Vyasadeva took the original Veda, which was originally called Yajur, and then divided that in 4 different Vedas, allocated a leader for each of those Vedas. So he taught the division to a specific sage, and they then disseminated that. And Srila Vyasadeva also created a section of the Puranas, which he then handed over to Ramahasana Sutta, and then that way the knowledge kept on coming down. So the Vedas were originally spoken by the Supreme Lord to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma spoke it with his 4 mouths and gave it to the world. When Lord Brahma gave the Vedas, it is compared to different jewels of different types in one box, all mixed together. And because the sages memorized all these jewels and verses, they were easily able to access it according to the questions presented to them. So if a disciple asked a specific questions, they could recollect it from their memory without any challenge. In Kali Yuga, if I'm asked a question, I may not remember, I may have to go and search for it. So in order to facilitate the understanding and the relevance of the Vedas, what Srila Vyasadeva did is he took this box of jewels, gems, mixed gems, and he divided the gems into specific categories, so that if somebody wanted to understand a specific subject or get specific content, they would go to that specific sage for that specific content. So he divided it and made it easy so that it can be disseminated easier and we can access it. Right? Just like your Veda base, which has all of Prabhupada's books, there's books, there's categories, you can search. So it makes it easier for one to access this knowledge. So that's what Srila Vyasadeva did. Vyasa means one who divides Veda. So Vyasadeva, one who divided the Veda very systematic, very methodologically, so that it could be relevant for our time. 23. Eta sayo vedam swam swam vyasan anekada shishye prasisyeshtach chisye vedaste shakino bhavan. All these learned scholars in their turn rendered their entrusted Vedas unto their many disciples, grand disciples and great grand disciples, and thus the respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being. So this complete manual was written down and then given to the main professors, as Prabhupada describes them, leaders, as sages, and they then disseminated this knowledge. Prabhupada writes in the purport, the original source of knowledge is the Vedas. There are no branches of knowledge, either mundane or transcendental, which do not belong to original text of the Vedas. They have simply been developed into different branches. They were originally rendered by great, respectable and learned professors, and in other words, the Vedic knowledge broken into different branches by different disciplic successions have been distributed all over the world. No one, therefore, can claim independent knowledge beyond the Vedas. One time, there were devotees, disciples walking on the beach, and they were telling Srila Prabhupada, we'd like to open up a university where we can research different subject matters. And Prabhupada said, no, there's no need. Research is already done. The Vedas is the research. So we don't need to do any research. And you can see this video also called the scientific verification of Vedic knowledge. We see that the Vedic knowledge, as Prabhupada is saying, covers all branches of knowledge, material and spiritual. Every field of knowledge is covered in the Vedas because it's a comprehensive manual. And this Vedas were across the globe. It's not just one part of the planet, across the globe. Therefore, we find that many devotees doing research to show how, for example, the name Hari means the supreme Purusha, the supreme personality of Godhead. This word Hari is practically in every part of this world. Here we see in different parts of the world, this word Hari is referred to in different ways according to their language. And like in Hebrew, in different places, different reference is made to Hari. Why? Because the foundation of all cultures, all traditions is the Vedas. The Vedic knowledge was all pervasive. The whole world was Bharatvarsh. The whole world was following the Vedic culture. And then slowly, different languages, traditions, cultures started coming, but you always find some similarities which are there, rooted back to the Vedas. 24. Ta eva Veda dur medair daryante purushair yatha evam chakara bhagavan vyasa kripa navatsala. Thus the great sage Vyasadeva, who is very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so that they might be assimilated by less intelligent men. So Srila Vyasadeva was Kripa Navatsala. He was compassionate to all living entities, especially those that did not have access or were not qualified to get access to the Vedic knowledge, which Prabhupada classifies here as less intelligent men. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada starts off to say the Vedas is one, and the reason for its divisions in many parts are explained herewith. The seed of all knowledge, or the Veda, is not a subject matter which can easily be understood by any ordinary man. Okay, so Prabhupada is making very clear, the Vedas is not accessible to an ordinary person. The Vedas, in terms of the language, in terms of how it's written and the content, is meant for a qualified person, not for an ordinary person. There is a structure that no one should try to learn the Vedas who is not a qualified Brahmana. This stricture has been wrongly interpreted in so many ways. A class of men who claim Brahmanical qualifications simply by their birthright in a family of a Brahmana claim that the study of Vedas is a monopoly of the Brahmana caste only. Another section of people take this as an injustice to members of the other castes who do not happen to take birth in a Brahmana family. But both of them are misguided. The Vedas are subjects which had to be explained even to Brahmaji by the Supreme Lord. So the caste system is not accepted. If you're just born in a Brahmana family, you're not qualified to understand the Vedas. The Vedas have to be understood by a spiritual teacher or a spiritual guru who will educate the disciple, just like even Brahmaji, Lord Brahma, who is the first created being, had to learn the Vedas from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the subject matter is understood by persons with exceptional qualities of goodness. Persons who are in the mode of passion and ignorance are unable to understand the subject matter of the Vedas. Majority of the people on this planet are in the mode of passion or ignorance, therefore they're not qualified to understand the Vedas. The ultimate goal of Vedic knowledge is Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. This personality is very rarely understood by those who are in the mode of passion and ignorance. In Satya Yuga, everyone was situated in the mode of goodness. Gradually, the mode of goodness declined during Tetra and Dwapara Yugas, and generally the mass of people became corrupt. In the present age, the mode of goodness is almost null. And so, for the general mass of people, the kind-hearted, powerful sage Srila Vyasadeva divided the Vedas in various ways so that they may be practically followed by less intelligent persons in the mode of passion and ignorance. It is explained in the next sloka as follows. So technically speaking, if one is not situated in mode of goodness, it's very difficult for him to understand the Vedas, access the Vedas. Majority of the people are in the lower modes, therefore they are not qualified. And Prabhupada uses, according to the verse, less intelligent. Their eligibility, their intellectual ability to understand the Vedas is not there. Therefore, they are less intelligent compared to those sages, the population in Satya Yuga. Prabhupada says everyone in Satya Yuga was in a mode of goodness. So in Satya Yuga, they had the intellectual capacity. They were more intelligent. They had appropriate, proper intelligence to access the Vedas. Just like Sanskrit may have been the mother tongue. They are brought up in a family where they have to speak Sanskrit. They know how to read Sanskrit. So therefore already when the sage is speaking in Sanskrit, they're qualified. Okay, so the intellectual ability to comprehend, to understand, to apply and practice, they had that. In Kali Yuga, we are less intelligent, therefore we are not qualified. We don't have that capacity. Text 25. And we see Srila Prabhupada, who was so expert that he went to a crowd of people that were not in a mode of goodness, yet with his potency and ability and expertise, was able to make these most unqualified, less intelligent people compared to those in Satya Yuga. He was able to make them understand the truths of the Vedas. This was Srila Prabhupada's potency, power, purity, and expertise, that he gave them the eligibility and the qualification required. He made them intelligent. Susu Medasa, made them very intelligent by Prabhupada's ability and expertise. Text 25, last verse for today. Stri Sudra Dvija Bandhunam Traina Shruti Gocharam Karma Shreyasi Mudanam Shreya Evam Bhaved Iha Iti Bharatam Akyanam Kripaya Muninaskritam. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus, he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women laborers, and friends of the twice born. So understanding that people are in the lower modes, they're not qualified, they don't have the intellectual capacity and ability to understand, and compared to previous Yuga, compared to Satya Yuga, in Satya Yuga, generally the sages were all male. They would be the ones performing the austerities. They would be the ones studying scripture. They were the one performing Astanga Yoga. They would be the ones performing meditation, not the women folk. The mothers would generally be serving the sages. And therefore, the male sages, they had the eligibility and the qualification to understand the Vedas and practice and help humanity with the Vedic teachings. Compared to Kali Yuga, both male and female are disqualified. But in terms of relevance of this verse, in terms of Vyasadeva, the sages were receiving this knowledge, and Srila Vyasadeva wanted this Vedic knowledge to be given to everyone. Those sages who were qualified, who had the intellectual ability, as well as those who were on the lower rank of the social stratum, social ladder, that did not have access or were not really involved in the Vedic knowledge, like the women, the laborers, or friends of the twice born. He wanted them also to have access to this knowledge. Therefore, he gave them the Mahabharata. So Prabhupada in the purport starts off, and here's a diagram that illustrates it. I'm not going to go into the diagram because diagram is simply a reflection of what's there in the purport. Prabhupada says the friends of the twice born families are those who are born in the families of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, or spiritually cultured families, but who themselves are not equal to their forefathers. Okay? So we're talking about two different types of generations, you could say. The previous generations, and now we're talking about the current generation. Such descendants are not recognized as such for want of purificatory achievements. The purificatory activities begin even before the birth of a child, and the seed-giving reformatory process is called Garbhadana Samskar. One who has not undergone such Garbhadana Samskar or spiritual family planning is not accepted as being an actual twice-born family. The Garbhadana Samskar is followed by other purificatory processes, out of which the sacred thread ceremony is one. This is performed at the time of spiritual initiation. After this particular samskar, one is rightly called twice born. One birth is calculated during the seed-giving samskar, and the second birth is calculated at the time of spiritual initiation. One who has been able to undergo such important samskar can be called bona fide twice born. So someone who's twice born, which means they go to Dvija Bandhu, they go through, Dvija, not Bandhu. Right? Dvija Bandhu is the friend of a twice born. Dvija means twice. It's born two times. First by your parents, and second through birth, spiritual birth. So previously, the children would go to the Gurukul, and the Guru will teach the children in terms of spiritual life. He would give them initiation. So they would go through this process of initiation, getting the sacred thread, and then they would become twice born. They would become qualified to receive the Vedic knowledge and to apply the Vedic knowledge. We find it in Kali Yuga. There is, now Prabhupada is, by Prabhupada's by Prabhupada's mercy, we understand what Garbhadana Samskar is. So prior to that, majority of the people on this planet had no clue about family planning, spiritual family planning. And they would not practice the samskars, especially the Garbhadana Samskars, previously, in the previous ages, this was a standard process. So therefore, people would, the souls that would come in would be Dvija, twice born, and they would be qualified to then receive the Vedas. Generally, the Sudras, the women, or the Dvija Bandhus, they would not follow this, and therefore they would fall in a separate category. Prabhupada says, if the father and mother do not undertake the process of spiritual family planning and simply begets children out of passion only, the children are called Dvija Bandhus. These Dvija Bandhus are certainly not as intelligent as the children of regular twice-born families. The Dvija Bandhus are classified with the Sudras, the woman class, who by nature are less intelligent. The Sudras and the woman class do not have to undergo any samskar save and accept the ceremony of marriage. So for this class, basically, they only perform the marriage vows. Okay. In previous ages, the Dvijas would, coming from these different societies, classes, they would practice spiritual family planning, and this class would only receive the marriage ceremony, purificatory rites. This classifies them from previous ages as those who are qualified to receive the Vedas and those who are not qualified to receive the Vedas. Those who are intelligent and have the purificatory process that gives them the ability to understand, the intelligence to understand the Vedas, and this group, they don't have the ability, the intelligence to understand the Vedas. And for them, the Mahabharata, next purport, Prabhupada explained, the Mahabharata, etc. was given. Okay? So just to make this point very clear, very often when, especially those in female bodies, when they read this statement, they become upset or agitated, that the Dvija Bandhus are classified with the Sudras, the woman class, who are by nature less intelligent, and they become very upset. In fact, there's they want to even remove it out of Prabhupada's purports. That how can Prabhupada say women are less intelligent? We're going to remove it. We're going to try to take it out. So the point is, we have to understand it in perspective. Just like I may be less intelligent in the science of law, in the science of astronomy, in the science of biology. There may be someone who's a doctor, and that doctor is far more expert and intelligent in medicine than I am. I may be more intelligent in computer science than someone who has not done that field. So we all have a greater or lesser intelligence in a certain field. And if I say, you know what, you have no intelligence for computer science because you're a doctor, that's true. And the doctor will say, yeah, that's true. Right? You don't have any intelligence, in the medical science, which is true. Okay. So similarly, in terms of understanding the Vedas, there's a group of people that are intelligent and qualified, and they were those that were born in the mode of goodness, that had proper spiritual family planning, they were initiated, they are classified. The rest of the population, they were not qualified. Okay? They were not intelligent because of the process, because of their birth. They were not intelligent to accept or receive the Vedas. It's got nothing to do with minimizing people's intelligence or the skills that they may have. Every single living entity has certain great abilities that they're great at. It's not like they're totally dumb, like animals. No, that's not the point. So when Prabhupada is making these statements, and in Bhagavad-Gita, these statements are there, in certain other purports, that Sudras, women, are less intelligent. Okay? It's not a derogatory term. in terms of minimizing people. And when people read, if they don't understand it in context or perspective, they get offended unnecessarily. In Kali Yuga, for example, if even myself, before coming to Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet and getting his books, I was less intelligent. Why? Because I had no clue of the Vedas, what the Vedas are, what's the source of the Vedas, what is the focus of the Vedas. I was never initiated. My parents, unfortunately, did not perform Garbhadan Samskar. Okay, they had no clue about it. So I was totally disqualified. That means less intelligent, and that's true. But by Prabhupada's mercy, now we have the process. Now we have educated. Similarly, in previous ages, the women class also generally were not given that opportunity to study the Vedas. And therefore, they were also classified. The Sudras generally were not, they were basically just supporting the three ashrams. The women folk were serving their husbands. So this is how generally the Vedic culture was coming down. Now, by Prabhupada's mercy, whether you male or female, you get exposed to the knowledge of Krishna consciousness. And therefore, by Prabhupada's mercy, he's giving us the qualification and making us qualified to understand the Vedas, to perfect the teachings of the Vedas, and perfect our lives. Another time, the devotees, they were analyzing this statement, women are less intelligent. So then one devotee studied and he saw that the brain of a woman is smaller, like in some grams. So then he went to Prabhupada and said, so Prabhupada, this point was less intelligent. It's true, the brain of a woman is smaller. So they got less intelligent. Prabhupada said, yes, but my women disciples, they are most intelligent. And if you take shelter of them, you can go back to God. Okay? So Prabhupada always made it very clear that this distinction is not about, it's not about minimizing the woman class. And in last week's lessons, we also heard that if one identifies with male and female, then no doubt they're less intelligent. So if you as a male identify as a male, you're less intelligent. If you're a female and you identify as a female, you're less intelligent. By Prabhupada's mercy, we are all becoming Susu Medasa, very intelligent. Understanding I'm not this body, I'm not male, I'm not female, I'm totally disqualified. I have no eligibility to understand the Vedic knowledge. Just consider to touch Bhagavatam, to expose yourself to Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada made it very clear, we read, you have to be a Paramhamsa to access Srimad Bhagavatam. Here we are, totally disqualified, yet we have the great fortune to enter into Srimad Bhagavatam's association. We have I don't know if any Sanskrit scholars are here, I doubt it, right? But I'm not a Sanskrit scholar. And yet I have access to this amazing knowledge. Why? Prabhupada gave it to us in English. So by Prabhupada's great fortune, we are all becoming intelligent. So that's how we should understand this specific statement and not take it out of context and make an issue where there is no issue. Prabhupada continues, the less intelligent class of men, namely women, Sudras, and unqualified sons of the higher castes. Note, Prabhupada says unqualified sons also. So he's not only talking about female. Okay, we have to understand the context. And normally when it's taken out of context, people misunderstand. Are devoid of necessary qualifications to understand the purpose of transcendental Vedas. So that's the classification of what makes, in this context, what Prabhupada is talking about, intelligent and not intelligent. Those who are intelligent, they can understand. They got a qualification to understand the Vedas. Those who are not intelligent, unfortunately, we don't have that ability. For them, the Mahabharata was prepared. The purpose of the Mahabharata is to administer the purpose of the Vedas. And therefore, within this Mahabharata, the summary of Veda of Bhagavad-Gita is placed. The less intelligent are more interested in stories than in philosophy. And therefore, the philosophy of the Vedas in the form of the Bhagavad-Gita is spoken by Lord Shri Krishna. Veda Vyas and Lord Krishna are both on transcendental plane, and therefore they collaborated in doing good to the fallen souls of this age. The Bhagavad-Gita is the essence of all Vedic knowledge. It is the first book of spiritual values, as the Upanishads are. Vedanta philosophy is the subject matter for the study of the spiritual graduates. Only the postgraduate spiritual student can enter into the spiritual or devotional service of the Lord. It is a great science, and the great professor is the Lord himself in the form of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And persons who are empowered by him can initiate others in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So whether one is qualified or not qualified, by the mercy of the Lord, now everyone can be qualified, because the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, is there for them. Prabhupada gave us Bhagavad Gita and purified our life, made us eligible to then go deeper and dive deeper into the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And finally, Prabhupada talk about spiritual family planning. Before we have a family, we need to plan, right? We don't want accidents, and we don't just want material family planning. We want spiritual family planning. So the Vedas have a whole approach of how to plan a family. Why? Because the goal of family planning means to raise God-conscious children. So there are 16 samskars given in the Vedas. And here in purport, Prabhupada specifically focus on Garbhadan samskar. If you want to know about the Garbhadan samskar, you can study this book by one of my colleagues and friends, Bharat Chandra Prabhu. He compiled this Garbhadan samskar book, covers everything you need to know about samskars. Prabhupada spoke about this even to the hippies in New York. Prabhupada would be speaking to them because, and you must know, their culture, their background was sex, rock and roll, and drugs. And Prabhupada would talk about that if, firstly, if you're staying together, you need to get married. Then you need to raise God-conscious children. So in sex life is specifically meant for procreation, for raising God-conscious children. And even then, before you have conception, before you conceive a child, you need to perform the Garbhana Samskar. So at that time, there's obviously different things you do, which you can read in the book. But Prabhupada specifically told them that before you have a child, one time Prabhupada was speaking to Brahmananda, and Prabhupada was saying that before you have a child, you need to chant 50 rounds. And Brahmananda Swami was saying, but Prabhupada, chanting 50 rounds before I conceive, if I chant 50 rounds, I'll forget about conceiving. So Prabhupada said, that's the idea. So that when you chant 50 rounds, now you won't be thinking about sex life and sex enjoyment. You'll be, your consciousness will be so purified that you conceive to attract a spiritual being. The idea of Garbhadan Samskar is that according to the consciousness of the parents, you will attract that level of, you will attract a spirit soul with that level of consciousness. So if one conceives, on a bodily platform, you will attract beings on that level. If you conceive at an inappropriate time, you can get a demon taking birth in your womb, or taking, in the family. Parents can get a demon. If you conceive with the Garbhadan Samskar, means you attract a more elevated soul. So that was the idea. And Prabhupada introduced that right at the beginning of Krishna consciousness in the early days. And now, devotees have researched more in terms of different ceremonies you can do, preparations, etc., in terms of how to optimally conceive so that you attract a very mature, spiritually conscious living entity And then you go through the different samskaras. Samskaras means impressions. So different samskaras then create the different spiritual impressions throughout the child. So for example, giving the first grains, you offer Vishnu Prasad. Or even when a child is born, they take honey and they write the sweetest name, Rama, with the sweetest substance, honey. In this way, all these things create spiritual impressions on the child, so that the child grows up to be Krishna conscious from birth. And this is how we're helping that soul by creating positive or Krishna conscious samskaras throughout the life of that, or the journey of that soul in this body, and in this way make greater and greater impressions to remember the Supreme Lord, so that when the child leaves this world, the child is now able to think of the Supreme Lord and leave this world. And that brings us to the end of this set of verses. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Canto1 Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Any questions or comments? Next week we will be covering 26 till the end of this chapter. Chandravandana Radha says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for enlightening class. This video on the prophecy in Kali Yuga, prophecies in Puranas about Kali Yuga, gave a real visual account of this age. Yes, and as we said, at least we should know what's coming, and we can see that what's happening right now is a tip of the iceberg of what's to come. Therefore, I can thank Krishna, my Lord. Thank you. I'm so grateful that I'm born now, because I have Krishna consciousness, and Kali Yuga is still very, very, the influence is very slight compared to what's coming, and I want to leave. I want to, what's the word? Yeah. Like I want to duck. I want to escape. I want out of here fast, before Kali Yuga comes. So therefore, I want to take my spiritual life seriously, so that I'm out of here as quick as possible. I don't want to hang around in Kali Yuga. In fact, this is not the first time we've been in Kali Yuga. We've been in Kali Yuga many, 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 many times. So even, in one sense, if I have to go through it and suffer it, it's not like the first time I'm suffering. But at least now we have the intelligence to understand, I don't want to go through the pain. I would rather, go through the pain of Krishna consciousness, the challenge of Krishna consciousness, surrender to the Supreme Lord, and then go back to real life of eternal service to the Supreme Lord. Seeing the part, so I'm just continuing your question. Seeing the part about people being controlled by microchip technology stems to mind and current COVID vaccination program. Not sure if there is any relation, but now indeed chanting the holy name is our shelter. Harinam Sankirtan Yajna Ki Jai. Yes. Just to let you know, COVID is not new. Virus is not new. In fact, in the Puranas, there's a story of a demon. And this demon performed severe austerities to please Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma was pleased, and Lord Brahma came and said, what can I do for you? So I think it was a demoness. No, I'll need to correct myself. I'll need to just check, but a demon nonetheless. And the demon said, I want to become smaller than the smallest, so that I can enter into people's body through breathing and contaminate them, influence them, kill them. So Lord Brahma said Tatastu. So that's how the virus appeared in this world. And this demon was able to expand its body into small, like virus type entities. And just by breathing, people would breathe this and be killed. And this started spreading and decreasing the whole population. So then the demigods, they went to Lord Vishnu and said, my Lord, what's happening here now? This demon is killing everyone. We need help. So then the Lord said, don't worry. And that's when Tulsi Devi appeared. Tulsi's appearance in this world was there. For us, Tulsi appeared, and Tulsi is there, Bhakti Devi, to give us devotion. She's the bestower of devotion. She's not Bhakti Devi, but she is that person that gives bhakti. She's Tulsi. She's very conducive for our devotion. And in Ayurveda, they use her for medicinal purpose. In Krishna consciousness, we don't use her for medical purposes. We use her for Krishna consciousness. We ask her for mercy to become more Krishna conscious. But in that past time, she was specifically appeared to destroy this virus. So it's also there in the Vedas. These things are not new. They've been there for generations, for millenniums in every universe. Shama says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you please elaborate on Manvantar avatars? Yes, there was in one of the lessons, I broke that down. So a Manvantar basically is a period. There are 14 Manus in the duration of Lord Brahma. And one of the Manus, he reigns during that period called the Manvantar. And the 14 Manus, they are called Manvantar avatars. So Manu, the father of mankind, is an empowered incarnation classified as Manvantar avatars to rule or to guide mankind, called Manus. And there are 14 of them. Okay, so Vaivashvata Manu, he is currently managing our affairs in terms of his position in creation. Yes, Prabhu, I will create a PDF and post. Shamananda Prabhu, thank you for explaining things so nicely for us. Seeing the vastness of the Vedas and the impact of time factor destroying almost all of them. If Srila Prabhupada didn't give us the knowledge the way he did in his books, then all hope would be lost. We would appreciate this more and more and should leave the words untouched, no doubt. Yes, and in fact, it's unfortunate that sometimes people have no other business but to start changing things that is there for whatever reason. It's a Western disease to change things. We should simply have faith that Srila Prabhupada knew exactly what he was doing. Prabhupada told Bhavananda Prabhu that when he was in the spiritual world, Krishna told him to go down to Kali Yuga and write books. And Prabhupada said, no, I don't want to go there. I mean, that place is like, gee, man, I'm not interested. And Krishna said, no, I want you to go. And Prabhupada said, no, I don't want to go. And Prabhupada said 3 times, Krishna asked him, no, you go. And I want you to go and I will help you. So then Prabhupada said, okay. So that's how Prabhupada, came. And Prabhupada said, Prabhupada told Bhavananda Prabhu that I want you to go. Krishna said, I want you to go and I want you to write those books. So Krishna's making arrangements. Krishna made arrangements to Srila Prabhupada to give us the Bhagavatam. It's, the more we become Krishna conscious, the more we will be dumbfounded by this amazing achievement of Srila Prabhupada to give us the highest knowledge with the most degraded of languages compared to the Vedic system of languages. English is compared to be like non-existing language. Because the Devanagari is a language of the demigods, very refined, very scientific, spiritual, profound. English is no way there. Yet, Prabhupada has given us the highest knowledge in the Malacha language so that we can understand how glorious and how fortunate we are. And therefore, we should not miss this opportunity to take advantage of these books, no doubt. Thank you, Mother Uttararani. Mother Lesh, Hare Krishna, but thank you for Krishna Katha These classes are more and more interesting week on week, always sweet and illuminating. Thank you. Vasastali, today's class give me gratitude, Srila Prabhupada, as it all has been so relevant. By just following him and his instructions, I realize how blessed everything in my life is with the process of samskaras. Yes. And Prabhupada, you'll see as we go through the Bhagavatam, there will be specific statements where Srila Prabhupada's compassion and mercy comes through. Like in some statements, the Bhagavatam will say, if you don't surrender to Krishna, you go into hell. Then Prabhupada would rephrase and say, if you try to surrender to Krishna, you'll be saved. That means you don't need to surrender 100%, but if you're trying to surrender, Prabhupada's mercy and compassion will elevate us. So like that, we'll see Prabhupada's compassion. It comes through in so many ways. And it's our greatest blessing that we are somehow or other, we have connected to Srila Prabhupada. And never lose sight of that. No matter what happens in our life, simply hold Srila Prabhupada's dhoti. Prabhupada said, if you hang on to my dhoti, you'll be saved. Right? Hang on to Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet, his lotus instructions, you'll be saved. Madhachana Siddhi, what if someone who does not follow the four principles and just at the time of conceiving a child, one chants 50 rounds? Now, will one attract a great soul? So great is relevant, or great is, what's the word? Relative. Great is relative to our understanding. And if one is not chanting or following the four principles and not chanting, it will be difficult to chant 50 rounds, no doubt. Right? Chanting 50 rounds is no joke. Your mind, in fact, if you start chanting 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, your mind is all over the show and your beats are just turning. You just want the beats to go and you're just basically mumbling. So the quality of chanting is also important. Right? Like we covered, Prabhupada said, parrot-like chanting, that's not the key. So if you parrot-like chant 50 rounds, you may get a parrot-like soul coming into the womb. We don't want parrot-like chanting. So you can't fool Krishna, right? And it's relative to your consciousness. Just to say, I chanted 50 rounds, but I still got the rascal. Okay, the reason you got the rascal is because you chanted 50 rascal rounds. Therefore, you got someone in that consciousness. Krishna will reciprocate exactly according to your effort and endeavor. Yeah. And you can't force this also. You can't force spiritual planning. It has to be inspired. You have to realize the importance. Just like you can't force somebody to study Prabhupada's books. I can't force you all to come here every week to hear, from Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purpose. You need to be inspired. You need to, it needs to come from you, but it can only come from you if one is applying, if one is practicing spiritual life nicely and diligently. Then the inspiration will come. If you're practicing nicely, you'll always be inspired. So like that, when you inspired, you can now, and you know about Gardam Samskara, then you can try to do your best. And that's also important. I may not be chanting 4 rounds, which is okay. But at least I did my best according to my capacity, according to the capacity of the husband, the capacity of the wife, because each one may be on a different level. Right? So our background, our culture, each spouse, but at least if we say, okay, let's do our best. That's what Krishna sees. And sometimes Krishna may override that. Your best may mean the 20%. And Krishna says, I'll give you 80% of the result, just because you tried. See? Or Prabhupada's mercy is there. So many ways. So at least we should try. And if someone, let's say is not following, at least they chant 50 rounds, that's glorious. And they'll get whatever effort they put in, Krishna will reciprocate. But it's relative to each individual. Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Jagannath Prabhu, thank you for today's most transcendental class. Thank you, Prabhu. Profana Prabhu, lesson made it very less anxiety provoking to be in this age. Correct. In fact, I'll give you one old elderly devotee, very aged. I was in Durban Temple and she came and she started, revealing her heart to me in terms of her difficulty or difficult challenges that she had in her life. And she's telling me, this problem. She went on. So like 15 minutes. So then after she finished, so I asked her, so you finished? She said, yes. So I said, just consider if you weren't a devotee. You would still have the problems and it would have been worse. Now the fact that you're a devotee, you're chanting Hare Krishna, you got Krishna's protection and shelter and Prabhupada's mercy and you have a different perspective. Your suffering is totally different from what everybody else experiences. So no doubt, by understanding Krishna consciousness properly, even though we may get the same suffering, the suffering will not be the same because we've changed our perspective to seeing suffering. It has all mercies inevitably. Krishna is way far made to be closer and closer and more accessible. All that needs is paying full reverence and more understanding of need to imbibe absolute knowledge. Mundane knowledge is scientifically proven to be relative with total lack of fixation and absoluteness. Time is ripe indeed to go back home. Yes, time is definitely ripe. Vasaraj Prabhu, Atma Prayer, thank you for enlightening class and also relevant videos. Thank you. Bafana, all glories of Vyasadeva, Sukadeva, Swami, Siddha sages and Sonaka, all glories Srila Prabhupada, all glories Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. Thank you. Yes. Wonderful. So thank you very much for your attendance. Next week, we're going to even cover some exceptional, very, very pertinent and important points. In fact, you could say it's like the most important point, right? But in the Bhagavatam, this point will come up, this is most important. This is most important. That's one of the most important points we're going to cover next week through the life of Sukadeva Goswami. So we'll see you next week. Thank you. Karantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande.